exciting conversations with her this past week and so forth, and she's driving, so she wanted to make sure that everybody knows that she's on, but probably can't be real interactive. Drive careful,
Yes,
Amy.
I was just waiting for it to start to say hi, everyone, and now I'm going to go mute again. So thank you for inviting me, Charlie and Sherry.
You bet, thanks. I'm going to give it probably another minute or so. It's 11:01, but we'll let everybody. We've got a nice crowd again. Just waiting to see if my co-chair was going to show up, but I'm not sure if he's going to or not. Have you talked to Tom, Sherry, in the last couple of days? Okay. And Aaliyah, do you know if Todd will be joining us?
I don't. I assume to us.
Okay. Okay, great.
There he is.
There he is. There he is. The man of the hour, Todd Nell.
Don't know about that, Charlie. I would toss that your way.
Right back at you. All right, let's get started. I'm not sure if Tom Goodhue is going to make the meeting and so forth. Welcome, everybody. We've got a packed agenda today because I'm going to try to throw something into the middle of the conversation, which a number of you have been involved in dealing with a grant opportunity. So we wanted to use this meeting to kind of knock around some ideas on how we approach it and move forward. So there's been great mental work that's been done on it so far, but we'll talk about that in a minute. I'll officially call it to order. Aaliyah, do we have a quorum? I believe so.
We do have a quorum.
Okay, great. So first order of business always is receiving any kind of public comment. Do we have any public comment out there?
I do not have any public comment registered for today, no.
Okay, and any of our guests have anything that they might want to add before we get started? Charlie's got a note here that says, please pause so some people can speak. All right, hearing none, our first action is approving the minutes from our April committee meeting. They were in your meeting materials that Aaliyah has done such a good job of getting out to us and reminders. So thank you continually, Aaliyah, for your work there. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of April? Hello.
I'll motion.
Georgia. Great.
And I'll second that.
Okay, who's the second?
Sherry.
Oh, great. Thanks, Sherry. All right. Any discussions in regard to the April minutes? There being none, are there any objections to the minutes as written? Hearing none, so approved. Unanimous. Ta-da. Okay, well, I'm going to kind of dispense with any kind of introductory comments and so forth for this particular meeting. We have two agenda items, as you see, the annual report interest, feedback and form review that I think Aaliyah and Todd were going to discuss. And then we have comprehensive policy consideration and assignments, which is really getting back into the how do we bring action to the elements that we outlined in the workforce report. And so there's been some commentary and people have been asking about how do we make sure that there is action behind our primary objectives and so forth. So we'll have a conversation. And then the other one that I might throw in after the initial report interest, and I think that Todd and Aaliyah, if I'm not mistaken, that's actually giving the group feedback from the survey that discussion that you took last time. I wasn't able to make that meeting, so
yes.
Why don't we start there? Todd.
Great, thank you, Charlie. Aaliyah, did you want to pull that info up so we can share it?
Yes, I will pull up that email I sent you.
Great. I know we talked about sharing this. Did you want to jump in and talk about that, or would you like me to?
Please go ahead.
Okay.
I know you probably know this, but I'm not seeing it yet.
I have it. I found it.
Ta-da!
Is almost live. Uh,
Almost.
that was my keyword there, right? Heard it. All right. Todd, I'm going to let you go ahead and go through this, but I went ahead and pulled up that email that has the feedback that I
Great.
gathered.
Thank you so much, Aaliyah. As many of you recall, to try and get a better start, a quicker start in our sort of annual goal of producing a self-imposed report. This isn't a report that's mandated by the legislature, mandated by the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, or anyone else. It is, as I say, self-imposed report. We, instead of sort of waiting and what seemed to be a little bit of procrastination strategy, decided to try and jump on this as early as possible this year. This is not to say this is the only thing that, Charlie and Tom are going to sort of be directive and make assignments on, because I think there are other buckets to the work that was, well, for example, outlined in the 2025, finished in 2026 Workforce Readiness Committee report. So in order to capture who was interested in what pieces and parts of, let's call it the final report project, Aaliyah and I put together a survey. We shared it, I think, openly in one meeting so people could participate collaboratively, real time, and then provide an opportunity in addition to that for people to sort of weigh in. And so what you see here are the responses that we got with folks' names called out in terms of having light availability and capacity of 1 to 2 hours, those with moderate availability, and then the others who are willing to roll up their sleeves and sort of, I would say, devote as much time as necessary to get things done. And then below that, you've got 4 more sort of categories that the survey captured feedback on from folks. Those interested in facilitating and coordinating, those who are wanting to write and edit, and then those willing to provide capacity around research and data info. So those, Charlie, Aaliyah and I wanted to sort of pull back up so that you could see that, with the intention of then maybe you want to ask for key volunteers. Maybe you and Tom want to say, okay, I want Sherry to lead the writing. Sorry, Sherry, but you seem to love that. That was just an example. Then if we move down, I think there's more categorical and feedback information around the sections that you're interested in, which sections could be improved, topics or trends from last year's report that you'd like to research or write about. And obviously, these aren't necessarily at all connected to individuals, but it does give you a sense of new ideas or features that you'd like to introduce. Like, hey, maybe we want to, create another subcommittee, support requirement that high school students post-secondaries graduate, register, in Oregon's public workforce system, and then increase state support for OES. What parts of the report are you most passionate about? And those sort of align with the different categories we have in our charter around STEM Lift, OED, OES, and I guess I'm getting used to the new organization I'm going to be moved to. And then CTE and transfer. So I don't know. I don't need to just read this to you all. You're great readers, I'm sure. Aaliyah, do you have anything that you'd like to toss in there from your perspective?
From my perspective, we could go through and assign ownership for each of them. This would also be a great time to, if you don't see your perspective or your name in this space and you'd like it to be in this space, this is a great time to add it as well, in case that we have any new attendees who would like to dedicate some time. But that's all I have.
Great. Any questions from anybody? Charlie, I guess I'll say before that maybe, does it make sense to you? I know that you and some others really want to talk about this grant opportunity, so I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this. At the same time, I think it's really important that you get some assignments made. Do you want to say chunk it into the 3 categories that align with the charter, and then ask for a volunteer, or if you don't get any, assign somebody to lead OES, lead STEM Lift, and lead the CTE transition work?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where it starts, and then we can utilize the information from here potentially for folks to reach out and collect. Again, one of the pieces that I want to reiterate is that the WRC really was founded to kind of bring action to items, and so that's a backdrop to this process moving forward. Is that we really want to drive whatever initiative we've identified as being important within those various categories, whether it be OES, CTE, STEM Lift, or whatever, or dual credit. I've sensed, like on dual credit, Eric, you've kind of taken a key role, obviously because of your position and so forth, and the whole dual credit and so forth. So the question is that, and I'm using you as an example, do you want to just take the lead necessarily on that one and then capture anybody else that would want to actually be a part of that ongoing conversation? And this also, for me, is a place of where we want to weave other agency or interests into that. So I would encourage people that if you're interested in dual credit, but yet you have some ideas, but you may not have any direct, go ahead and feed into one of these primary areas so that we do continue to get that collaborative effort, because I think that's what's brought us to this point today. So and again, Eric, just using you as an example. So but let me just ask, because we do have the primary focal areas, and then there are various people. And so what I'd like to do is, maybe, Aaliyah, to your point, let's identify if we have kind of 3 or 4 leaders that want to step into each of these particular areas. And the first one is the employability skills. And so, and as far as that's concerned, is there somebody that would want to? Sherry, do you feel as though you want to actually take the lead role in that, or do you want to just do the participation, being the chief architect of such?
Well, I'd kind of like to collaborate a little more with Susan, who works with me at ODE, because she's been taking a little larger role and interest in this. And so I want to honor that. And so it could definitely become a more collaborative space from that, from there. And then also anyone who has interest in that, I would just want to make sure that they felt very welcome to be a part of that.
Okay.
And Charlie, the survey is in the chat in case someone didn't get a chance to fill it out. I just wanted to point that out.
I see that in there. Thank you. Well, let's then, Aaliyah, let's go ahead and we'll make the assignment of, Susan, are you open to kind of co-venturing that with Sherry as far as the leadership of peace? Great, thumbs up. Okay. The next one is Project STEM Lift. And we had a great voice for a long time with the leadership of STEM, participating and so forth, but that's, I think, waned a little bit. And so do we have anybody really that wants to step into this, the STEM Lift opportunities? So this is a collaboration with STEM, but also bringing some form of action and opportunity to what was pointed out. So, and as I read the report and so forth, I'm just going to reiterate here that to prepare Oregon students for rapidly evolving economy and so forth. So it looks like this initiative supports the Oregon Prosperity Roadmap goal to foster innovation. I didn't necessarily see a lot of action within the STEM Lift. So I think that's probably something that needs to be worked on, quite frankly. Do we have any volunteers that would like to step forward on this one?
Charlie, obviously my interest in STEM Lift is well known, but I would, and I definitely want to participate, but I want to understand what the lead part here means. Is it with respect to the current report and saying how we drive action? Is it with respect to writing, or no, contributing to the new report, or both?
Both. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say both. I mean, quite frankly, again, Sarala, prior to you coming on board, OES was really the guiding project, and we were all kind of focused in on that. And then we really felt as though there were other things that should be addressed that related to both the WTDB's mission and strategy, as well as, again, this body bringing actionable items forward. And so it's really whoever is in the lead here is really coordinating the activities of Project STEM Lift back to the and saying, okay, how do you utilize this group and so forth for action? So.
Yeah, I'll volunteer to
Okay.
take the lead. I'd love to collaborate with someone, obviously.
Okay.
So hopefully other people will express interest.
Great.
I know that Stephanie's here, and I know, Stephanie, you're very new in your role, so you may feel like, I mean, I've been in that situation, like, I don't know if I should speak up or what to do, but obviously, we really want to invite you strongly into that space.
Absolutely. I don't know anything.
Yeah,
about
Charlie, that's why I had my hand up as
hold on a
well. A
second, Todd.
natural sort of like member to me is because I think Deb Mumhill was in when she was on the committee, sort of gravitated for obvious reasons to that chunk of the charter. So I would echo what Sherry said.
Yeah, and Stephanie, I think we've overspoken on you a couple times here, so please.
Oh, I have no information about STEM Lift. I have heard the title, but nothing beyond that.
Okay.
So I'm happy to
We can-
support, but I don't have any background on that. I don't really know what it is.
Fair. So why don't we make sure number one is that Stephanie gets the copy of the WRC report, which is it's articulated in there, and then maybe a conversation, quite frankly, between Sarala and Stephanie to see if there's some interest there of how this integrates or not. I mean, the two of you could basically say, hey, listen, we're unsure, and please bring that back to us for conversation if that's the case. So,
Yeah, I'd
okay.
love someone from the education field here, outside of Stephanie, of course, leading Oregon STEM, be part of this, because so much of our focus is around K-12 and that section. So it'd be great if someone in this team from that group or background would be part of this.
Absolutely.
I'd be happy to help get the conversation going and give some background information. And then I saw that Carla Clark's on here, and I'm hoping maybe she would tap in on this one as well.
Hello, this is Carla, and I did just jump in, so I missed some of what you were speaking about before, but maybe later offline you can catch me up.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, Sherry, why don't you connect in then with Stephanie and Sarala and then Carla, and let's have a conversation focused really on the leadership and the need for integration into, again, what are those action programs? Sarala, I know you've had a lot of ideas that you've been bouncing around of saying, I really think we need some of these focal points. So.
Yeah, I have one question, and we can discuss it later if it's not appropriate right now, because I think that I've mentioned this to Todd and Venkat as well, is that we have a lot of people on the board with a science background, coming from industry, and it would be really powerful to have outside of these committees that we have like an interest group, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that would like cut across this, but just since it's an organizational thing, perhaps Todd has to make a decision, or I don't know who, that we can tap into that, not just the people on this committee, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And I think, well, the conversation or the introduction I just did with Amy is a good example. As we are growing in many of these initiatives and so forth, there are people that are actually being drawn in from outside that weren't official committee members, and we have welcomed them to be able to be a part of the process and so forth. It's just managing how big it gets.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, but even if you
Okay.
want to go to them and say, hey, here's a straw man thing, what do you guys think, and use their connections, because as I'm
Mhm.
learning, the networking and connections is one of the most critical things here
Yes.
to make any difference. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay,
Agreed.
thanks.
Todd.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Sarala, for flagging that. I don't know if it makes sense, Sarala. I don't have much, if any, experience with the strategy that you and I talked about in our last couple of conversations outside of the meeting with the interest groups, but maybe it's something that when you come back to the next meeting, you could bring back in terms of a little bit more info around who you're thinking of perhaps tapping in your network to comprise that interest group, and share a little bit about that. The other thing I wanted to say, which you and I and Venkat talked about separately and sort of emailed together, was Sarala's good point to both Venkat and I. Um, you know, uh, by all accounts, feedback on the last report was very, very good. And Sarala's good question. Now what? I think I was just talking about this in another committee meeting the other day. I think so many times we get wrapped up in achieving the main deliverable, which is completing the report and distributing it out to the various important stakeholders and partners. But then what? Where's the action? So
Right.
Sarala flagged that for Venkat and myself, and Venkat has it on his list of to-dos when he next meets with Sarah Means in the governor's office to have that conversation about, has she been able to read the report? What are her thoughts? What would she recommend in terms of, action steps to move the comprehensive policy considerations that we talked about the last meeting and that was in your packet forward. So just wanted to share that, Charlie. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Dual credit. So as that conversation has gone, and not using you now as an example, but asking Eric, would you continue to kind of lead any interested parties in regard to the dual credit and early college conversation?
Absolutely, Charlie. And
Okay.
I know my colleague, Christadel McGregor, is here today as well. And
Great.
to be honest, this is such a structured project we're working on too that we meet every week about it. So we'd love to open it up to bring in other voices, though. We're at a particularly important time on our project where we're working on an advising toolkit for schools, and we would love some additional workforce perspectives on what might need to go into that toolkit. So we welcome anybody to join us.
Great. Great. Well, Eric, you're bringing up a tremendous point, and that is once we've determined what the leadership is, it might be helpful then to simply say, from our perspective, here's some things that we'd like in regard to background and so forth. It's like, putting a board together, and you want to make sure you have the competencies that are going to help the conversation move forward. So I might suggest that as a process, and we can maybe ask a little bit of help from Leah in regard to kind of putting something together on that. The other one is career and technical education for all. and when we have the for all, which has always been a dream of mine. And is there anybody, again, that has a desire to perhaps lead that conversation?
Hi there, this is Johnny Farrell from the CT department at ODE. I'm not the normal participant for this group, but they were out today, but I think our team would like to be actively engaged in that work, whether we lead it or are just engaged. And so I think we'd like to learn more and get involved. So make sure that we're aligning. So
yeah, would you?
You can put me down for now, and then we'll discuss internally.
Yeah, that would be great. Is if there's somebody that's suited to taking a leadership role in that and so forth. And then the other side too is that we have the statewide CT Advisory Council.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, because I've served on both and I still serve on both, but I think that that connective tissue is really important. And we don't need to duplicate efforts. So
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
so, yeah, it's a really critical to have that that combination. So great. Okay.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll follow back up once I talk to my director and team
Okay.
about how and who. Thank you.
Todd.
So one quick question for you. Just this exercise makes me think of what we did several years ago where we put together a sort of project plan and then use that to track the project. Do you think and feel that is appropriate, or should we just wait for things to evolve and see where we go?
I'll throw that open to the floor. I think the project plan is helpful. I think what we're trying to do is to do a little bit of reorganization with some purpose here, which again, Sorella, back to your point earlier, it's both. It's looking at what we said that we were doing in our last report, and then it's also then planning what we want to continue to do as we move forward. So I think it's both elements, quite frankly. And what I would suggest is that the leadership within those is really put together either a draft or some kind of a straw man based upon, again, information that we've already done, but then also to say, nope, we've discussed it with amongst our group, and we'd really like to focus on something. And quite frankly, I don't think it should be hugely broad. I mean, we're still working deeply on the OAS part. So we may not, oh, by the way, if you hear a rumble in the background, it's the air show this weekend and they fly over our house. They're doing it right now. Anyway, it is important, I think, for these groups to kind of get together and take a look at the report, synthesize some concepts and ideas, and then bring it back to us so that we can be more action oriented. And that's the piece. I don't think we're looking for the whole group to trudge things along. We're really trying to parse this up and create a village to raise a child.
I have a question. So could we get a list of all the people on this committee with their backgrounds? Because I don't often remember, which organization they're from and what background. That would be very useful in leveraging at least the background of the people in this group. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do we have that, Aaliyah and Todd? And
it should be a name and role and organization should be on the agenda every time.
Okay.
And with email, and does the email, or do I have to, because I often have to go into the calendar invite and look for people's emails.
We can take the list and add emails.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So for next time, we might just reserve some time, Aaliyah, on our schedule for kind of reporting back on that leadership piece. And what we might do is kind of parse the meeting into really just covering those specific areas as we walk through on a monthly basis. So, but the action will happen mostly within those subcommittees. So, all right. Moving on, if that's okay. Anybody? So I'm going to move into the grant piece real quick. Sherry had advised me, what was it, last Thursday or Friday, of a potential grant opportunity that was sizable, and that, as we have all kind of now digested the opportunity, it really could leverage not only the governor's priorities, but also the priorities of what we do here as a collective body. And so conversations started, and we started to have various conversations outside of the normal group. George has been an active participant, Sherry, myself, Susan. Oh my goodness, there's a number of people. And so the interest has grown in regard to this grant. It is clear that this is a collaborative effort. And so, Sherry, I think, first of all, can you just briefly explain, kind of at a very high level, what this grant is shooting for?
Yeah, and there are quite a few people in here have been contributing to thoughts around this. Christadel, Eric, and so forth have been putting a lot forth in this. But I think, and you're going to hear this from my perspective, you guys, and this grant writing is not like my world. I'm plowing in and learning. But I think this one really hinges on the governor's initiatives and what comes from that report. The prosperity report. And so for myself, that's one of the things that I looked at, and I've seen a number of you do that. Go and look at what are those goals, and then looking at the full report. I know when I glanced over it and then I actually went in and really read it, I understood a lot better about what it was trying to do. And I think it's very aligned with the work that the WRC is doing, and that is to bring things together so that we can create opportunities and all kinds of things that to move forward, but also in line with our local workforce boards and so forth. So that piece we've talked about in our report about coming together. And so that's the part that excites me about being able to move forward potentially in a way that what we do really matters kind of to everyone.
So we want to have inclusion. Thank you. We want to have inclusion in the process, but this needs to be submitted by June 9th. Is that right? So very truncated process. And we wanted to use this as a collective kind of just letting everybody know, so that you've got your ears plugged. We don't want to be exclusive of this, but it also may be difficult if we try to be inclusive of every perspective. And so, but it is important that we get multiple people together to actually assist in this process of brainstorming and then synthesizing and then setting up the grant as we move forward. For me, one of the key elements of this is really trying to finally figure out a way that we can thread the silos that we have together in a collaborative effort to try to really define a project that will capture the eye of the feds in regard to funding Oregon in this process. And so we've talked, for instance, about wanting to have the employability skills and our talent development be in essentially world-class nationally recognized. And the employability skills is a good example of one of those. So it needs to take somewhat of a central spot in this as a way to then web the various things that, the various things that we need together. So what we wanted to accomplish today is let everybody know that this process is going on. Several things about the grant that I have taken is it has a very, very clear workforce lens. In other words, it's one of those that's not necessarily looking just at education, but education is then the pathway that they're focused on in regard to bringing that learner into the world of work. And that resonated with me in regard to how OES works. You can learn it in the education system, but it amplifies your success rate once you're outside of that system. But it's also, I think, an opportunity to be able to figure out a way that we can get OWP and Georgia's network with the regional directors and education pushing together. And what I've learned, I learned this last week or the couple of weeks ago at ACT that I kept hearing it and so forth, is Oregon has a very weird educational system that literally things happen at a building to building level in all regions of the state. And so it's difficult sometimes to be able to pull all of that together with an initiative that will help all parties. So that's one of the pieces that needs to occur within this grant is that we are bringing all learners to that pathway, and so and trying to leverage that. So what I'd like to do is that actually, I think, did that get posted in the chat? I don't think so. The actual grant. Oh yeah, there it is. It is. So it's posted in there under Susan. Thanks, Susan, for putting that in there for everybody to take a look and read and so forth. I think what we'd like to do is that for me personally, I wanted to more advise plus ask, but it appears as though Georgia and Sherry have been two real key connectors in this process at this point, and I'd like to see that continue personally. And there will be obviously education elements will be engaged in that. Workforce community organizations, CBOs, potentially would need to be involved or at least aware. So we'll need that perspective potentially as well. And so we'd like to form a group that would be able to assist in the process of synthesizing the scope and then putting that together. Sherry has and Georgia have created, and I think actually there's some pieces that Susan has participated. They've synthesized a straw man at this point, and I think can act as that process moving forward. But do we have anybody within this audience that said, I really would like to participate in this process? I'd like to have a voice in this process. And that's kind of what I'm asking. Sorry, Carla. Yes. Are you raising your hand to say, yes, you want a voice in this?
I am, yes.
Cool. Okay.
Yep, include me. Thank you.
Great. Carla Clark. Sorella?
So I have a question on this. So, I mean, I don't have any ideas right now, but I know that in our WRC report, there were initiatives that we had recommended across all the 4 different categories. So, Sherry, have you been looking at that across the different categories and seeing which of these may be good candidates? Because that's the only thing I would do is go to the STEM Lift part and look at, because there were things about educating teachers on different career pathways.
There is that in there. Christadel has also offered up some information that's been sort of synthesized already. And of course, nobody's given their last word on things, right? Everybody's in that process. I haven't heard from Eric directly, but I've heard Eric's got some ideas and putting together some things as well. And I think it also gave some priority to career counseling initiatives, which would probably fall under Beth. So I think really we just want to make sure no one is left out, and not everyone is captured in this room. So when people say, well, how will someone know? Take it upon yourself to make sure they know, okay? Because this is a really fast process. And so it's very easy for us to leave someone out of the process if we just don't know. So just don't forget to elevate someone. I know Deb Bailey's name was in the the chat thing. Johnny brought that up. And so, yes, absolutely. We're looking to make sure we don't leave anyone out that wants to be a part of the process. But I think a huge piece is what Charlie and Todd and others that are at a different level than I am, is they've got to figure out how, because the governor has to say, yes, I want you to move this forward. And so there is that piece that has to be worked on as well. And then I think we're going to have to decide who actually puts in for the grant. That's a huge piece of it as well. And how that works. You can do some sub-awarding. So again, those are conversations that need to be had.
So what would be the best way? I'm not sure that I'm ready like to be in several meetings at this point because of everything, but I would like to have input and just an email maybe on pointing out about ideas, or would that be
Yeah, I
helpful?
think
Okay.
what I recommend to people, and this is what's been kind of organically happening with some of the folks that have been weighing in, is that going and reading the prosperity report, then pulling up the actual grant, looking through it to see if there's anything in there that's really of interest to you, that you feel like you want to contribute thoughts around what could happen. And then, yeah, sending an email. I'm going to be honest. I think we should send our emails to Georgia. She may not agree with me, but
Georgia, speak now.
Yeah.
I've been
Sure.
sending
I
everything
will,
to Georgia.
I will voluntarily take that on and kind of help synthesize that. But what I do know is the ideas are welcome. I don't know if we'll have a large part of this just because ODE and HAC haven't decided who's going to lead, and we have to get that approval. So, as far as I'm concerned, my ideas are kind of on ice until anything more happens. So if you send me information or ideas, I'll collect it and I'll transfer that knowledge over. But yeah,
Okay.
holding pattern.
Yeah, great. Johnny, I know you've had your hand up there.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say that our director, Jenny Newby, is planning to be actively involved in this and has scheduled some follow-up meetings with Todd and other key directors at ODE, as well as Krista Dell's director and team. And so we want to be active and engage in this. And so from our perspective, the director levels, I think, will be the most appropriate. And so Jenny's asked us to start reading the RFP and reviewing it next to several initiatives and making recommendations, and then has subsequent meetings to follow up on it and with other ODE directors and HEC.
Great, thanks, Johnny. Todd, just real quick. So I would volunteer to essentially have the conversation with Sarah Means, and quite frankly, I've had a conversation with Sarah and Andrew at OED, Andrew Stolfi, in regard to the WRC initiatives and so forth. And this aligns very, very well with the conversation that we had. And in both the individuals' cases, they said, let us know where we can help, where we need to plug in, because the transition of the WTDB over to OED, while it may be kind of occurring, it hasn't necessarily had the handoff as yet, as I understand it. So, but I think also the approach to the governor's office needs to be very, very quick, but we're going to need a straw man in order to be able to have that conversation. And so that we can see where that alignment is. And again, Georgia, Sherry, and others have already started to try to do that crosswalk so that we can have a conversation with the governor's office. And so it may not be just me. It might be myself and maybe Todd and Georgia or Cherry or, I don't know who would have that conversation, but we're going to have to do that probably within the next week to week and a half. So that's a critical item.
Jenny Newby is included in all those conversations.
Yeah.
She's on all the emails and stuff too. I just wanted to say, really what Georgia and I are trying to do is help keep the process going. We are working with the information that you send us. It's not as though we're trying to direct the grant. I want to make that clear. We're gathering information and thoughts that you have and making sure that that information, we're looking at where in the grant would that information go. There's going to need to be a process of review and all of those kinds of things. So please don't think that's what we're trying to do, but it's a 30-day period. So we're just in the background trying to help as little worker bees to help facilitate any of that we can. So.
And we have to be definitive enough in our response to the grant so that there are going to be tangible outcomes. So Sarala, back to the points that you've made with us and so forth, we're going to have to think hard about that. But in order to do that, we also have to define the scope of what our activities can actually do, given the grant dollars that are available. So, Todd.
Crystal, did you have your hand up?
I do. I was just echoing what Johnny said, ditto on that. But the other piece that, and my background is definitely more academic. So I'm coming from that academic world, but I am someone who has written and managed and served on review boards for federal grants. So my caution to you, there are two absolute priorities for this grant. Make sure that everything you're doing is lined up with that. Because when people sit down and score this, that's what they're going to look at. Does this line up? Absolute priority one is the career and college exploration and advising piece. So I think ODE and HEC will probably be very deep into that. Absolute priority 2 has a ton of options, and you can pick one or more. And I think that's the one that is speaks to supporting workforce development programs that are aligned with state priorities. So that's the story that the reviewers are going to be looking at. What are the workforce development programs that are aligned with existing state priorities? And that's how they're going to award points for these areas. And then there is a bonus one too, but just be really aware as you're brainstorming, because I know everybody has brilliant ideas, but if it doesn't line up with the RFP, you're not going to get points for those. So just throwing that out as a planning caution.
Yeah. Thank you, Christadel. And I apologize, I didn't see your hand because I was over on the chat side. So, all right. Back to you, Todd.
Thanks, Charlie. I was just going to say, I'll loop back with Julia and try to get a better understanding of how she wants to move forward. I think she's got some ideas that she tossed out there for folks. I'll also ask her, since you raised the dynamic of WTDB, headed over to OED, what Julia's thoughts are with engaging Sarah Foster and Andrew Stolfi around this again. And share that. So those are two of my follow-ups. And then I also wanted to ask a question. All this talk of grant opportunities made me think of some of the not surprisingly hard work that Sherry and Georgia have done back upstream in applying for grants with other partners. I can't remember for the life of me sort of what the timetable was on those grant applications to hear back whether or not they were awarded, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, Georgia and Sherry.
You want to know of which was awarded? Can you rephrase that?
Yeah, you and or Sherry together or separately applied for some grants back upstream.
Yeah.
And I just was curious on the status.
I see. Well, separately, OWP is also the recipient of the DOL Pathways Home for grant and then the Work Ready statewide grant. And so we do manage that level of funding. Sherry and I wrote a grant for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and we did not get awarded. I'm not sure who was awarded in that series, but we're always looking for other opportunities that help align. And the primary focus that we come to is how do we fund, the interconnective pieces between all of our siloed agencies. Everyone does really good foundational work, but often we're not communicating together. And what if we could build the infrastructure to support those systems that brought us into the next phase of working together? So
Georgia, there's also the home ownership grant, which is a very large one,
Oh,
and
yes.
that one's moving along. But I don't think do you remember? It's quite a while before we really know. We made it to a next little step. That's a grant with Team Oregon Build as a huge partner on that one, and it is a large grant. It's 4.6 million. But again, that one's a long time before we actually know what we have on that, if anything. But we did make it to the next little step, so.
Yeah, I don't have any sense on the time frame of that one. I'm guessing we won't know till the summer or fall. But yeah.
Thank you both.
And then Sherry and George, I know, have also been trying to work with the Ford Foundation in regard to attracting their attention for pieces. And all of this really comes down to the fact that, and that's what kind of excites me about this other grant, is really we OES as an initiative does not have an agency home and it does not have a funding stream moving forward. So sustainability are in question and infrastructure in question. And so I think if there are ways that we can leverage what some of these grants can do to be able to build this into the ecosystem, that's what we're really shooting for the long term, so that this great work that all of you have participated in discussions does not get dropped. And so Todd and I yesterday talked to Ashley Espinoza and John Stapleton.
Stapleton, yes.
Yeah, Stapleton from the
Pivot.
Eugene area,
Mhm.
and they walked us through a very high energy process of how they have just embodied the OES skills and really leverage those skills into their program, so that all of the students that come out of there, they're going to get those employability skills as a part of that experiential project and that they're working through. And so very similar to the iBuild program and so forth. So anyway, and they're going to launch hopefully 4 new sector processes this year, so we've got some wonderful models out there, but they're not there yet. They're still cooking. So, okay. So if you are interested in participating, I would encourage you to connect with Georgia. And again, Sherry, you made a great point, and I want to reiterate it. Please don't take offense if nobody's called you, talked to you, so on and so forth. We're trying to go really, really fast on this. And Christadel, to the input that you've already had and then what you offered here, there are specific lenses we need to use in regard to our approach on this. And so the writing will be critical. So if you would be interested in writing, helping to write the grant, or just involved in the conversations that may come up, but it's also going to be critical that we are highly focused on, if you want inclusion, how do you want inclusion? What does that look like? What's your scope? And how much do you think dollar-wise there would be? Sherry, I had to clarify this, and maybe either you or Georgia can, but I've heard some different figures popped around and so forth. But the grant itself, the huge number on the very top side, I believe, was 44 million that was available for distribution out. But the grant that we could potentially apply for what's the top level, and is it a single year or multi-year?
Yeah, it's 3 years, and anybody correct me if I got it wrong. We're moving fast on this, and it's a total of 9 million. But our conversation on this has really been around, you're going to have to write an absolutely amazing thing to get 9 million. So we have to look at what we end up with, what our needs are, what we want, and how closely everything aligns before we would probably go to the 9 million. So I'm not counting that out, but I'm just saying I know how those grant processes go, and Christadel, I'm sure does too, that if you're going to get that full amount, you're going to have just an absolutely outrageous written grant, and that's hard to do in 30 days. So we might need to figure out what's realistic there. And then I want to add one quick thing that as you're thinking about what you hope this grant will provide for the opportunities for these students, you've got to be thinking about how much it's going to cost and those kinds of things. You need to be thinking about whether you want to hold the work, because there can be subawards. You need to think about that in terms of your capacity, or whether you're wanting the agency that does the work to, like architect it out and do scopes and sequences and those kinds of things. So there is an opportunity to have someone else helping with those kinds of things, but you have to have that kind of clarity for people. And again, I'm saying that because this is very fast. Georgia and I think wrote one grant in like 7 days, and it was crazy. It was like 30 pages. And so you got to be really spot on, and don't hold anything back. If you want something, don't worry, well, if someone else is going to ask for that or not ask for that. We don't have time to come back 2 weeks later and ask for something new, right? I mean, it's not in this type of 30 days. So you got to just be bold and honest and assertive, okay?
Yeah, and again, be thinking about that workforce lens as well. I think that's a real critical one as we're working through this grant. So this has brought us to 11:56. My co-chair is not here for the comprehensive policy consideration and assignments, but I think we did some of that prior to, so I think we're good. So let me use the last 4 minutes. Number one, thank you. But the last 4 minutes, is there anything anybody would like to bring up for the good of the order? Yes, Todd.
Yeah, I would just highlight that next Tuesday is the biennial Oregon Talent Summit. It will be over at the Salem Convention Center from 8 o'clock start registration anyway, and then 9 to I think all the way to 6:30 if you stay for the no host beverages and networking. So it should make for a great day. A lot of Oregon leaders in workforce education and economic development, and so many other partners will be there. And so if you haven't registered, please do. And we'd love you to come. I think we've shattered, I think, previous records for registration and are upwards of 520 now. So there will likely be, for the first time ever, over 500 folks at the convention center, and it should be a great opportunity for all who attend. Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, and I know you've been spending a lot of hours getting everything ready and speakers aligned and so forth. So it takes a tremendous amount of effort. So thank you for you and Aaliyah and all the folks at WTDB for what they're doing to put it together. So thanks. Anything else? I'm going to have to go back and read the chats because it's been popping, and it's hard to run the meeting and take some notes and see all of those. So I apologize if I didn't get to anybody. So as always, appreciated greatly the conversation. This grant process is another one of these things where I think it shows the power of coming together. So delighted to see that this one is really trying to stitch things, and we can make great work. Thank you, Johnny, for that last comment. So, all right, everybody, we'll talk soon. We're adjourned.
Thanks, Charlie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.